Flowcharts are super useful for understanding and improving processes. That's also why they're one of the 7 quality tools. Hello, I'm Tom. Welcome to my channel where we talk about continuous improvement in an industrial setting. And this video, it's about flowcharts and why you would want to use them when you're analyzing and improving a process. Or basically even when you want to understand anything about your production, your processes, or business things, service processes, office processes. Making simple flowcharts, flow diagrams is a key skill. It can be done according to a number of different rules. So you have your network charts, your formal flowcharts, and even a value stream map is sort of a flowchart with a lot added onto it. But the basic flowchart is a basis that you really want to know. And they look usually something like this. And if you use the general flowcharting rules, you've got your rounded squares, your rounded rectangles. They are start and end points, so they are events inciting the process. They start a process and they are the last thing happening, so the result of a process. You've got all kinds of process steps, those are those rectangles, and then you've got these diamonds that are decision points. Now, there is a whole bunch of extra symbols that you can use to make a hugely complex flowchart, get all kinds of things in there. When you are communicating with people who are used to flowchart language, that can be really useful. But when you are just using it for discussing with colleagues how things work, I would tend to keep it to a minimum. Now, why do you really want to draw out a flowchart? See, we can have quite a complex process going on with lots of milling, getting in material, putting it into shape, checking whether or not this is going to be our main product or that it's more likely to be a specialized thing, another word for defect rework, go through another number of process steps, or go to the side process where it's error handled or choice handled and have a different outcome. If you put it in a graph like this, you can easily discuss all of those steps. And as soon as you have those steps, you can put things next to it, like the cycle time, or where do we see problems, or in which of those steps do we have parameters settings that influence the stability of our process. Hugely important if you're working on process stabilization, on Six Sigma. You use it specifically for that goal. But you can also use it to discuss with your colleagues or with clients in the field or with people that do the work in a process that you don't really know, and you're just getting into a factory and trying to understand what happens. And some of the things you will see is, let's say that this is the flowchart as it is in the manual. So that's basically your procedure, or at least this is how management describes it. Then what we see in the quality manual is that, well, there is a quality step that is quite important. So basically what the operators should do in the logistics area is they do need to take a couple extra steps, and if you make this into a nice flowchart, you will of course stretch it out. Although, specifically when you're making the comparison, so this is what management told, this is what you see in the field, I would recommend you to keep this original shape to drive home the message something else is happening in your organization. Now, some extra steps need to be added here. Then when everything is nice and sunny, goes down, indeed, end of process, looks the same. But when we have these different products, that actually also goes through a number of reworking, maybe a blocking or an analysis stage, all kinds of things before we get to the end of the line. Then we get to the operators. We're gonna interview a couple of team leaders, shift leaders, operators, people really doing all of these things. And what do they tell us? they tell us, yeah, indeed, there is this extra step here, but that we never use that. And actually, when we have a defect, this whole reworking, repurposing, it doesn't work. The customer buying up our spare stock pays just as much for that as for the whole rework stuff, so we don't bother with it. And then when you do have good stuff, oh no, but you forgot that we also need to polish it and then put it into ripening for a couple of weeks. I don't know, there is some extra work in the end. Now, when you have these type of pictures, and you see it already getting messy, and that is the whole idea of this way of flowcharting, because basically the three colors are three different sets of people who told you three different things about exactly the same physical process. Now, of course, it may be that somebody's just adding some more detail that was assumed in here, but that is where your role comes in. You do have to ask a bit about this. Is that really a different process? Is it done by somebody else? Can you do it separately or not? Or is it just sort of semantics, making it a different process on paper? But very often you will see that there are indeed pretty important steps, especially when this is done by one department, that is done by another department. It really pays off to put that also into your flowchart. And this way you can now again discuss with management, with your quality and technology departments, what do you really want have happened in your factory, in your process? How should it look now that you know that in practice we are doing some different things than you put on paper? I mean, apart from that, if you have an ISO audit and the auditor finds this out, so the auditor does the red stuff, they will probably give you a knockout or at least a serious remark because you are not following your processes as you laid them out. But that is the auditing part, right? What they are actually trying to do, ISO auditors, I'm not so sure if the auditors are trying to do this, but what ISO should be doing is that the system helps you manage your operation, helps you manage your processes, make it more efficient. So basically when you get a strike from an ISO auditor, it is a sign that you are not really managing your business. And by managing your business, you would probably be more effective. Think about it as you want. I know many people don't really like all those ISO audits. I'm also not a huge fan, but at least that is what the system is intended to do. And that is also what we are now doing by getting the picture from different sides onto the same piece of paper, getting that discussion, making clarity on what is really happening in our factory, because that will form the basis of future analysis, the basis for plannings, for training, for how we talk about what we're doing in practice. Here, I told you, oh, it's easy because here we can add some times how much it takes, or we can add the parameters that are important. But here we will always have forgotten the parameters that people set here, or the way this work is done. That's why putting it on paper in a simple way, not too many words, really the processes, helps you out a lot. So anytime you get into process improvement, but also before you start any value stream mapping, before you start getting a training plan or getting all of the specs down, before you really start doing anything, make sure that you've mapped the process in this type of way. Make that flowchart, because it will help you in your thinking about what's happening. It will also help you tremendously in the communication about the process, in the planning of subparts, in directing your attention, directing where improvement resources are needed, what is the total scope of work. Everything basically that you do in managing continuous improvement also really benefits from good flowcharting. So this is not something that you only do for an ISO audit. This is what you do for your own internal organization. And even if your organization doesn't really like it or require it, do it sort of in secret. Take a piece of paper, flowchart for yourself. Get into the habit of just putting the logic of what you see onto paper in this sort of graphic form, because when you trigger your mind to go over the process in such a graphic way, you open it also up to thinking about it as sequential process steps, about seeing the interconnections and seeing how the total picture and the small picture, how they interact, how they relate to each other, and how much you are affecting with your small improvement project or with your training or whatever you are doing. And by putting it on paper, but that's with anything put on paper, any brainstorm, any report, any analysis, put it to paper, because as soon as it's on paper, preferably in a visual way, other people will not interpret it in their own way as easily, but will see what you wrote down and will start to correct you. And that is a good thing. You want people to challenge and correct your thinking, because if this is the original picture you had, and that is your truth, this is very useful information before you spend all your time and energy in improving steps that in the end were not the most critical. And if you'd be interested in more advanced ways of charting, like a value stream map or a process map, let me know in the comments below. I'd love to make some videos about that. If that is the stuff that you would be looking for here on YouTube, or maybe now after the comment I made, it triggered you to want that stuff, let me know. I really like making videos based on your questions and your needs, because that is value added. It's basically working from the voice of the customer, right? For now, I wish you the best of luck understanding your processes. And as always, don't forget to enjoy the continuous improvement journey.